Hey everybody, Chris Bober here. I'm the team leader for Team Bober Nebraska Realty, and today I wanted to bring back to you some forecasting for this year. And I ended last year with showing some trends that happened within our real estate market. I did talk about the Job Cut Act and how that is going to affect real estate. But today I wanted to go over some overall economic indicators and maybe discuss a little bit on how they're going to affect the real estate market going forward. So if you look at it, we're going to talk about the economic forecast and how it affects home ownership. I did want to put a disclosure out there. I'm giving my opinion. While I am a professional realtor, I've been doing this in my 9th year. Any legal or tax advice should come from a professional like a CPA or an attorney. So I always put that in there just to cover myself. But just to recap, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that came up, really we talked about that. They did cap some deductions, which will probably be the biggest factor for a lot of people out there. 1031 exchange remains the same, and corporate taxes are reduced, which probably will help some of these economic trends we're going to talk about. Homeownership will be affected by some of these people, but I don't see it as right now, especially given the demand. I don't see it as slowing down the train that's rolling for housing right now. So let's look at some economic factors that are affecting home ownership these days. You know, number one, I would say in a positive mind frame is that we are trending upwards. The United States gross domestic product continues to grow, and we're increasing steadily, and that means we're making money and everything's good. Unemployment rates are at their all-time low, and job growth is at an all-time high. There's a lot of different reasons for that, political and non-political, but there's more jobs and unemployment is down. There are new construction demand. We do have a big gap in there as far as needing to build houses and use them, so that's coming up. There are some issues though that are showing up here too. Growing personal debt, especially in the form of student loans. So there's a lot more debt our country's incurring. Some of that's a good thing, some of that is going to hurt us. There's also been increased lending regulations, which have maybe been a barrier to home ownership. And this information I did get, I want to share. There's a research study that's put out in a presentation by Dr. Kenneth T. Rosen at the National Association of Realtors Convention. He has put out some studies. I'm taking a lot of this information from that to share with you today. So, looking forward here, let's look at the economic outlook, the economic forecast that he put out there. As you can see, there's several indicators here. The gross domestic product that we have here has been increasing steadily. It went up 1.5% in 16, last year 2.1%. They forecast it to kind of level off, but we're still around 2%, which is really, really good. Unemployment rate is continuing to go down. Again, in a couple years, that's a forecast. I'm not really concerned about that as much as I am about this year. Economic growth, jobs created, a ton of them last year. I think there's a lot of programs put in place. A ton of 2 years ago, there's a ton of them last year. They're predicting a good amount of job growth this year. I have no idea the interest rates and stuff is going on, but they are predicting the interest rates will probably go up a little bit. Let's look at maybe something that affects housing directly is the number of sales. 5.4 million last year, or 5.6 million last year off of 5.4. They predict us kind of leveling off in this area, and that's probably, maybe it should go down a little bit, but because of the demand, it's going to continue to go up. Housing starts 780, under 1 million a couple years ago. We're getting closer. We need more and more houses. And then the price appreciation still stays steady around 5%. So looking at that, one of the things that I think is a little bit alarming, and this is kind of happening, we are recovering, is the home ownership rate. Okay, back in 2004, pre-recession, we were at an all-time high of close to 70%. 69.2% of people owned houses. That's a pretty big number, and the dream of home ownership for Americans is still going strong. Recession came and took that all the way down, and even in these growth years coming in 11, 12, 13, 14, we're only experiencing a moderate increase in growth. So when this was up here, to go back down here, we really have not caught up with home ownership, and there are a lot less people who are homeowners by percentage than there were before. So if you're looking at this home ownership by age, this is where we're starting to see some of this impact here. The number one change in it, almost 12%, is the 30 to 34-year-olds. Millennials down here are down 9 and 3% respectively. And if you think about it, it's about the time when you get your late 20s and early 30s where you've worked, you started a family, and you start looking at owning a home. And that number is down so much, and that's alarming because I believe that that's going to start trickling into these older generations. As these people have a lack of housing, we're going to see a lack of housing going to the older generations too. So that's something worth looking at. If you want to talk about why there are less people who are owning homes, number one reason is we're not building enough homes. If you look at 2007, they had 1.7 million new construction starts. So that's how many new houses they started that year. Of course, the recession came and this dropped down. But here's the deal. While the new construction starts probably should have gone along this area, ended up going down here, the population kept going up, right? We have 30 million more people in the United States at least since 2007. Yet, we're starting less than 1 million houses a year. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I will say that the result is that there is not enough affordable housing out there for people. So this is a big time alarm right here from me. Student loan debt. You talk about one of the barriers to home ownership is going to be debt. You know, when you go to get finance for whether it's new construction or buy a permanent house, one of the things they look at is how much debt do you have. Well, in our country, we have an alarming rate of student loan debt that continues to go up. Right now, we're 14% of the barriers to home ownership is student loan debt, and that continues to rise. So as it becomes more expensive, as inflation goes up, as the cost of education goes up, more and more first-time home buyers can't buy houses because they have too much student loan debt. Now, here's an interesting statistic right here, a little graph. This shows the number of people who actually, even though they have student loan debt, they actually can afford to buy a house, but they're not. They're continuing to rent. Look at who these people are. Millennials, Gen Xers, all right? So people under 50, most notably the people under 35, are the people who continue to rent even though they can afford to. A lot of that comes down to the fact that there's not a lot of affordable housing, and people in the millennial range are not buying McMansions. They're not like the baby boomers who have equity in their house. They're looking to start out with starter homes, and there's just none to be had out there, or not very many. Speaking of debt, this is a great graphic, I think, to show kind of where we are with debt in this country, right? So looking at the peak, the recession, pre-recession in 09, we had a debt number. This purple one is overall U.S. debt. And that debt went down. And there's a ton of reasons out there. People stopped buying stuff. You had people who were forgiven on debt, whether it's corporations, individuals. Anyway, it all went down. But then it started rising up again. And there's a good correlation between debt and mortgage debt, which is the yellow one right here. Mortgage debt continued to go up, so that means people are buying houses. However, look up here. This is student loan debt. The top line up there, that's turquoise. Student loan debt is at an all-time high and continues to go up. So two problems we identified: lack of affordable housing. One of the big factors in there, student loan debt. There has to be a solution out there somewhere for people to either take less student loans, forgiveness, government subsidies, what it's going to be. But student loan debt is a huge factor that we have out there. All right, so to summarize this short presentation on the economic issues that we have, the overall economy is doing really well. I think we can all agree by that. There's more jobs, less unemployment, money's cheap to borrow. That's a good thing. Housing volume and prices continue to go up. In a lot of ways, that's a good thing. People are selling houses for record prices. We are shattering records for sales all around, but you know, they're probably getting towards their peak. It can't go on forever. Now, housing affordability and home ownership are down. Less people as a percentage of our population are purchasing houses because there's not much available. And you look at the gap that's going out there between new construction prices and where most of the market is that can buy. Most houses are being built in a market above where most first-time home buyers and new owners are. Student loan debt. This is obviously preventing a lot of first-time home buyers from purchasing houses, which is why you see, I mean, it still drives the housing prices because a lot of investors are buying them or renting them. Rentals are up. New construction starts are down. While we are up from a couple years ago, we are still way below where we need to be and where we were pre-recession. And there's going to have to be some fixes in that area. The housing affordability gap, as we talk about it, is widening. Houses are expensive to be built. They're being built where people can't afford them. All right, so conclusion. As we wrap this up, just talk about maybe some things to look for, whether it's news in the headlines, whether it's some of the things that affect some of the statistics, or whether it affects your decision to buy, purchase, invest, or build homes. It's still a great time to buy or sell real estate. if you can afford it, if you can purchase, or if you can sell, if you're in the market for a home, you're still looking at a great time to be a buyer and seller on both sides of it. However, changes need to be made to address our growing needs. I think we all think everything's super rosy out there. Us inside the business see some cracks in the foundation of home ownership that need to be addressed. Maybe one of those things that some people are promoting that Kenneth Rosen talks about this, some other economic out there, some of them are promoting this, is to promote development, maybe to bring in new developers, maybe some federal and state subsidies, and then reducing some of the regulatory hurdles to get financing for development, especially for housing that's affordable. And because right now it isn't super, it's not all that great to be developing housing right now, because it's just they're not making any money doing it. Improving access to credit for first-time home buyers. This is where we talk about student loan debt forgiveness, maybe changes some regulations, maybe some more educational features out there. But we definitely need to get these people into the market owning, buying houses, and some new ideas for increasing new construction. I anticipate you're going to start seeing some prefab housing, some modular housing, maybe some tax credits. I know Omaha in itself is looking at inner and urban areas to put cluster housing together, things like that. We're gonna have to get creative, or people will just stop buying houses. There's so many of them that aren't buying them now that need them, but right now they're not getting in there. So I really think that we're at a great time in our market to purchase and buy and sell houses. However, we are looking at some changes coming up in our industry and in our market. So for more information, if you want to learn more about our market, or if you're looking to personally buy, sell, invest, or get into new construction in the Omaha market, you can call Chris Bober. Of course, my wife is on there with me too. There's my phone number and there's my email. So I really hope you appreciated maybe learning about some of these factors that are affecting home ownership, that are affecting the real estate market, and you can always call me for more details. So thanks again for tuning in. If you're looking for anyone to buy, sell, build, or invest in the Omaha real estate market, call the pros at Team Bober and we will tackle the market for you. Have a great day.